On the podcast today, and he's going to kill me for saying this, but we genuinely have the legitimate James Bond. This gentleman is unbelievable. We have Andy Torbet. Andy Torbet served time with the British forces as a para-bomb disposal expert. Now, after this period, he then became a professional cave diver, a professional skydiver, and a professional stuntman. And he actually was a stuntman involved in the James Bond movie, No Time to Die, which makes him, in my eyes, James Bond. In this podcast, we're covering so much interesting stuff about the stunt world, about skydiving, and obviously about cave diving. Some near-death experiences, some incredible stuff that Andy has been through and done. It was honestly an incredible conversation. Before we start this podcast, if you could do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button, 5-star button, whatever it is, wherever you are, I'd really appreciate it. My name is Harrison Brown, and this is the Infline Podcast. If you're watching or listening, I hope this helps. But listen, so from the para bomb disposal to a cave diver to skydiver to stunt performer, I mean, do you think it's fair to say that you're addicted to adrenaline?
I'm glad you asked, because the answer is definitely no. I am aware, and I give a lot of public and corporate talks, and this comes up every single time, and I'm usually at pains to sort of convince people that their perceptions aren't true. It doesn't always work. Even at the end, they're still like, "Oh my God, you're a madman," because that's the kind of perception. Is you look at what I do and what I've done, and it is, you're a lunatic. You've got a death wish, all that stuff. None of that's true. None of that is true. I'm probably the most paranoid and cautious person you like to meet, which is why I'm still alive, frankly. And it's the same across the board. So I've worked with some of the world's best skydivers, some of the world's best cave diving explorers, some of the world's best stunt performers, and they're all the same. It's a very cerebral approach. The intent is to make sure everyone goes home at the end of the day. Because and a lot of that is what I learned doing bomb disposal and high risk search in the forces, because what's really hammered home to is the idea of doing an accurate threat assessment, which is basically a military version of a risk assessment. It's as dull as health and safety, because the idea is identify the critical dangers and the critical risks, either ones that are going to hurt you or somebody else badly, or be lethal, and then do something about them to make it acceptably safe, because you're working on the assumption you can't just not do the thing. And there were times in the forces when you had to do things that were still, no matter what you did, potentially very, very dangerous. And I'd say that there are things in life which are worth risking your life for, but they are very, very, very few and far between. And these days, I don't really get involved with many of them. The cave diving exploration, for example, it's a bit of exploration. It's not worth dying for. TV documentaries, films like Hollywood type films. It's just a movie. You know what I mean? It's not that big a deal. It's just not. So, I mean, nothing. Even the sort of search and rescue work that I do. Again, we've just finished. I've just finished running a basic course for the new recruits, and one of the things we hammer home is your first responsibility is to make sure you are safe. Your second responsibility is to make sure your team are safe. Your third responsibility is the casualty. It's not this risking your life to save somebody's life. No. If you're risking your life, we are doing something wrong as a team, and you're doing something wrong as an individual. So, no, I enjoy the requirement to kind of bring your A game to a lot of these things, and I enjoy the challenge and the focus that it brings, but I don't enjoy being scared, and I don't enjoy adrenaline rushes. And when I first started skydiving, as any sane person is when they jump out of a plane, you are pretty terrified, right? The first time you do whether it be a static line jump in the forces or do my AFF sports skydiving after I'd left, it's terrifying. And it took me probably a good 100 jumps before I was kind of over it. So, I didn't have a particularly pleasant first 100 jumps, but I knew as soon as I kind of got over the nerves, it would all be cool. And I enjoy skydiving far, far more now that I have zero nerves and zero adrenaline rush than I did when at the start, when it was a massive buzz, but just not my thing. Not my thing.
Yeah. And how do you train for that? I mean, the first time you jump out of a plane, do you have someone on your back?
No, you can do. You can do a tandem, which is like you say, you're wearing a harness and you're strapped to somebody's chest. I've never done that, and the idea of being strapped to somebody else fills me with dread because I'm a bit of a control freak. So I just don't. And you know, I think most skydivers are the same. You get the guys who are training to the tandem rating will come into the parking shed where all the sports skydivers are hanging out, and go, oh, I need to do some practice before my exams. Does anyone want a free jump? You know, because they can come in and most people are like, no, thank you. The idea that it's terrible. So how you do it through the AFF, the Accelerated Freefall course, is you do a ground school for a day, spend a day, you learn all about the parachute system, how it works, how safe it is, how to operate your main canopy, how to cut that main canopy away and deploy reserve if you have any problems, how to fly canopy, how to land, all that sort of stuff, and you practice lots of bits and pieces. And then on day 2, you'll go up and you'll jump out of a plane with 2 instructors, but you'll be wearing your own parachute, you know, helmet, goggles, jumpsuit, parachute, and one instructor will be holding one arm, one leg, and the other instructor will be holding the other arm and other leg, because that means they can control you. If you're going stable, they can basically fly for. They're flying you, and then with each progressive jump, you practice more and more skills until you get to the point. Ideally by jump 7, but it might take 8 or 9 or 10 jumps depending on how well you're doing. But you can do it in 7 jumps. You are diving out the plane. You are doing lots of turns in the air. You're getting nice and stable. You are tracking, so you're kind of doing that Iron Man across the sky. You make yourself go unstable. So you do somersaults, then get stable again, and then you pull your parachute and you land all by yourself. And there's one instructor with you just in case of any problems. He can come in and stabilize you or pull you through whatever it needs to be. And then after that, you're on your own. So theoretically, your 8th skydive can be completely solo if all goes well.
That's terrifying. That is terrifying. And is there anything that goes wrong? Like, see if I'm on my first, I'm scared of heights, right? If I'm on my first skydive and I jump out and I faint or something like that,
yep.
Is that possible?
I don't know if it ever happening on an AFF. It happens sometimes to tandem passengers. We call tandem students, but tandem passengers. Sometimes they sort of get to the door and just sensory overload and pass out. Often they wake up under canopy. But yeah, of course things can go wrong. That's why you've got 2 instructors with you initially, and you've got to sort of pass in each level. So level 3 is your final level with 2 instructors, and unless they can both let go of you and just sit back and watch you, and you're stable and you're okay and you can do all the stuff you need to be able to do, you will not progress to level 4, and that's when you first jump with just 1 instructor. So and it's very rare, but sometimes there's a case where after a few jumps, the instructor has to take you to one side and go, mate, I just don't think skydiving's for you. If you're really, if you have an absolute epic on your first jump, on your second, on your third, on your fourth, and they're like, mate, I don't know if this is for you. But one of the things that can help a lot is getting in a wind tunnel. I always recommend to people that if you can get in a wind tunnel, so it's an indoor, people probably see these things, an indoor wind tunnel, you can probably sort of skydive, in a tunnel. That's great. 10, 20 minutes in there should mean that you just fly through all 7 levels, because you've learned to fly your body and how to get stable and get comfortable in the right position. And an instructor can be in the tunnel with you and basically kind of almost like walking around, just tweaking where your hand is, your elbow, your knee, your foot, that sort of stuff to sort of, which you can't do as easy, obviously when you're falling out of the sky.
Yeah.
Also, I should say, being scared of heights is irrelevant to skydiving. It's irrelevant because the human brain, I think, because we are an animal that has evolved to live in the real world where we would never been exposed to like 15,000 feet above the earth. I think we've got a maximum capacity to kind of appreciate distance and height. So unless you look out of a plane window when you're flying on holiday and get scared of heights, then you'll be fine jumping out of a plane, because it's a bit like looking at Google Maps. It's such a long way down, it's kind of a bit surreal. Your brain can't really cope with it. So it's not like looking down from 100 or 200 feet. It's like looking at a satellite image.
So it's almost like your brain just can't process how high up you are. So the fear's gone.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, you've got the fear of jumping out of a plane, but I don't.
It's a pretty big fear.
Yeah, but I don't think, because that kicks in long before you actually look down. And most of the time you don't look down. You get in the door, and how it works, you've got to jump out and look up basically. But so you can actually watch the plane fly off. But so that's not it. Plus, there's the fear tends to, I think there's a bell curve of fear in skydiving with new people. It's not exact symmetrical bell curve because it tends to happen the day before you get a bit anxious, and then the morning of you're starting to get nervous, and then you get kitted up, and then you're really getting nervous, and then you walk out to the plane. Oh, you're getting really nervous now. Plane takes off, climbs to altitude. As it climbs to altitude, you're getting more and more and more nervous. And then the red light comes on, someone opens the door. It gets super noisy. You can see clouds outside. Again, I think the noise doesn't help. And then you really are, getting a little bit scared. And which is all perfectly normal. It's just, this should not discourage people at all. And then it's your turn to get in the door. And at that point, the bell curve starts on the way down. Because you're then doing something. And then as soon as you exit the plane, it all goes away. All goes away. It's a bit like a race. I always think that the Olympic 100 metres, before the gun goes, the 8 most nervous people in the stadium are the 8 people on the start line. As soon as that gun goes, those 8 people have zero nerves. Everyone's scared. Everyone's nervous before a race. They're nervous in a race. And same with skydiving. Once it's time to actually act, then I think the nerves start diminishing. And once you exit the plane, you there's no nerves. You're too busy getting stuff done.
I suppose it's a bit like autopilot, isn't it? Like your brain just defaults to what it knows to do. It's almost like fight or flight, apart from you can just switch your brain to autopilot.
Yeah, there is. I mean, people don't always act correctly, but not because they're in free fall, but not because they're scared. I think because it's like sensory overload. It's just a short period. It's like 1 minute is all you've got, but it's a massive sensory overload. Most people think their first jump lasted 4 seconds, but their last jump their 7th jump lasted 2 minutes because time seems to expand because you're just more aware of what's going on. You're more used to it, but you very quickly become aware of that. Say 7 jumps later, and the jump feels 10 times longer. So, people do sometimes sort of mentally switch off in free fall at the start. But I think it's just because they're sensory overload, not because they're not terrified, they're not screaming, they're just kind of almost unaware of what the hell's going on because it's a new experience for them.
Yeah. And have you ever had any kind of like anxiety-inducing moments where you thought, oh shit, this has gone wrong, I need to sort this, like mid-air, mid-free fall?
Not many, to be honest, not many. Little ones, we did it's little things like I was doing a training actually for I actually competed speed skydiving, which is exactly as it sounds. It's the fastest person wins. So you jump a plane and you go head down as fast as you can. Yeah, I was at the World Championships in Arizona 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and Marco Hepp, I think he broke his own world record twice during the event, but I think he clocked 526 kilometers an hour, which is like, 320 miles an hour.
Yeah.
He managed, which is,
wow.
I mean, I've done like 274, so I'm actually quite slow. It's a speed skydiver. You say people, I'm 274, like, my gosh, but yeah, but it sounds fast, but compared to the other guys, it's actually not that good. So I was trained for one of those, and it's hard to kind of explain if people aren't skydivers, but basically one of my, I think on a riser, so one of my, the bits of kind of equipment that connects my harness to my parachute came out of the little pockets held in, and slipped down my arm. And I realised that I came out the dive and then tried and threw my parachute, and it opened, but it had a lot of twists, not a massive issue, but it was real off. It was opened at a bad angle, so it's kind of spinning quite fast and violently towards the ground. But that's fine because at that altitude, I had time to sort of make some decisions. I had seconds to make decisions, which is actually a reasonable length of time. And I thought, right, I'll start kicking out. So I managed to start kicking out of it, and then I've got a hard stop at 2,000 feet. I've got a beeper that goes off in my helmet, and that's my decision point. Like, do I have a problem? And if so, am I going to fix it in the next few seconds? Because if the answer is no, I need to chop the main away and open my reserve. So by the time I got 2,000 feet, I had like one twist left. I was like, cool, I've got the other 6 out. This is not a problem. I'm not going to chop. I've got this. And then other little things, I've done things like, well, I did some jumps for some equipment. It was for a documentary, but it was some prototype rockets, electric, let's say, jet engines that were strapped to my legs, designed by a friend of mine at the UK Space Agency. And when I pulled, one of them broke, or it was like almost like a holster, imagine like a gun holster on my leg. And one of them broke and it started slipping down my leg. So to bend my leg up, like I was trying to get my heel to my backside to catch this thing, slipping all the way off my leg, because beneath me was the landing area with loads of like a TV crew, but also loads of like other skydivers landing. Yeah. And I thought, I can't have this thing slip off my leg and and land on people's heads, because it's a big heavy bit of kit.
Yeah.
So I was spiraling down, trying to get down really fast, because obviously if you try and hold your leg in that position, your hamstrings starts kind of cramping up and going on fire. And then I do a one-footed landing, because we had to continue filming that day, and I thought we can fix the strap, but if I just like drop this prototype jet engine on the deck, it's going to break, and that's the filming day over. So it's like, right, I need to try and do a one-legged landing, and so there's been days like that. But I mean, I don't really do like cutaway my mains. It's quite rare for me, because I jump with a relatively sort of big safe canopy, because I do a lot of low level stuff from balloons and also things like wingsuiting. I've got quite a big stable, it's like a kind of, I don't know, Volvo or Land Rover Defender of parachutes. I've got a friend of mine who he jumps this tiny little super sporty canopy, like a Ferrari. But if anything goes wrong with that, even half a twist, you've got to chop it. So he did like 13 cutaways. So again, you can choose equipment to reduce the chances of you having a problem.
Yeah. And what happens if you're, I suppose, listen, you were saying there, like it's like the Range Rover of parachutes, like it's like quite big, it's quite sturdy, it's safe.
Yeah.
Is your reserve also that safe? Like, for example, these guys that have these more sporty parachutes, is the reserve always going to be the sturdy one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to geek out too much to your audience, because but basically most main canopies are 9-cell, most reserves are 7-cell. So a 7-cell canopy, basically, it means that it's a base jumping canopy is also 7 cells. So what they're after there is reliability of it opening, first of all.
Yeah.
The opening being on heading, it's not going to open and then take a 180-degree turn to left or right, and it's very reliable. So my reserves are 7-cell, as all reserves are, but my main is also a 7-cell. I'm kind of jumping with 2 reserves. So it means that my main isn't particularly sporty, and it may not be. It's not as much fun to fly, but that's cool. That's not my thing. I'm not a massive canopy pilot. I mean, canopy piloting is very cool, and it looks like a lot of fun. But it takes a long time to get good enough to do that, like thousands of jumps, which I just don't. I want to put my efforts into other things in skydiving, because that's the thing. As I said at the start, like 7 jumps, 8th jump, you might be jumping on your own. It's actually very easy. Genuinely, it's very straightforward to get competent at skydiving. Competent enough to exit a plane on your own, drop out of the sky, get stable, pull your parachute, and land. That's actually quite simple. However, it's very, very difficult to get good at skydiving. It requires a lot of hours and a lot of jumping. So that's the thing with skydiving. It's easy to get okay, but it's bloody hard to get good.
Yeah. And I've had quite a few military kind of personnel on the podcast, and a lot of them have talked about this kind of, when they get back from deployment, they talk about a kind of clarity that only comes over them when they're doing something extreme. I think when you're in these military environments, the only thing you're thinking of is like the next step, kicking down that door, looking out for your brothers in arms, you're only thinking of that next step. And then as soon as you get home from deployment, you're thinking about your mortgage, you're thinking about your kids, you're thinking about picking up from school, you've got, a job that you need to go to. And that can be quite overwhelming for people. And that's why they go into extreme sports. Do you think that's kind of why you went that way?
Yeah, I don't know if it was, I don't know whether the military kind of makes you that way, or whether you're that way, therefore you're attracted to the military. But I don't think it's necessarily the military. I've got mates who are skydivers and world-class cave divers who are never in the military. But I think there is an attraction with doing something which requires all your focus, whether that be, as you say, kicking a door and like attacking a house, or defusing a bomb, or doing some fairly involved skydive or cave or whatever it is. Because if it requires all your concentration, then there's kind of a clarity of focus and there's a lack of stress, because it's like, right, all I've got to do right now is worry about this one thing. Like, simplicity in life is remarkably stress relieving. Like when I'm away I'm doing stunt work on a film in Italy for a month, and I've gone there and I've got one bag. That's it. I mean, I've got my stunt bag, which is probably held somewhere, like my pads and harness and that. But like in the hotel, I've got one bag, right? A couple of tracksuits, pair of jeans, t-shirts, pants, socks. That's about it. And again, God, it's remarkably stress relieving just having one bag of stuff to worry about.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. And I know I've got, like, when I'm free diving, in that moment where you're going down the line, come back, all you're thinking about is going up and down the line. That's it. You're not thinking about like the mortgage or the kids or what you're gonna have for dinner tonight, or what you think someone might have said about you, and stressing about what people think about you. Skydiving's the same. You exit the plane, and for that 60 seconds, or if you're wingsuiting the 2 minutes, that's it. That's what you're focused on, and that's all that really matters in the world. So your universe becomes one very small thing, and I think that there's two things. One is that it's, as I say, it's quite peaceful to only have to worry about one, the thing that doing the job that's right in front of your head at that point. And the other thing is that there's also, I think, like you said, a clarity of focus. I remember we did a job in Bosnia once, and it was the first time really where I was in, I don't know what you'd call it, like a sort of high threat situation. And I remember sort of stepping on the ground, and I swear, and I can still remember now, it seemed like my eyesight was better, I could hear better, I could think faster, and my IQ got up by 10 points, And I'm not sure that happens with every skydiver or every cave diver that, but there is, I've had moments where just, I was in a higher state. They seem to be happening fewer and fewer the older I get, to be honest, but I think that's kind of what you're chasing. And the other thing is that I think hard things give you perspective. Not so much skydiving, because skydiving is a load of fun and it's quite social when you hang out, but things like cave diving or solo cave diving stuff, or when you may be underground for days on end, and it's hard work, because especially if you're humping dive kit, which are always a ton between summits, between underwater passages through the dry parts of the cave, and it's dark and it can be pretty brutal, and often it's cold and all that stuff. It's a very, very psychologically oppressive environment. You're underwater, on your own, in the dark, in the cold, all that sort of stuff. And it gives you, again, clarity of thought, and you start to appreciate the things that we all kind of know cerebrally, but that should be the important things in life, but we start taking for granted and we forget about things like, a warm bed and a hot shower and nice food and your friends and your family, a beer with your mates in the pub, or just, spending the evening on the sofa with your missus, or just hanging out with your kids for the day, whatever it is. But those things that we do tend to take for granted but are super important. So, if I've got a project coming up and it'll be 3 or 4 days underwater on my own, and I will come back from that a wiser man. Only temporarily. You gain a degree of sort of transient wisdom, but after putting yourself through that, you come back and you're like, yes, I remember what's important.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I'm as bad as everybody else. I'll give me a couple of months or even a couple of weeks, and I'll kind of be back to the old ways of slightly taking your kids and your wife and your bed and your shower and all that stuff for granted. But at least for the first period of time when I come back from that, I will remember what actually matters.
We need to pause this podcast really quickly to bring to you a word from our sponsors. Chisholm Hunter are the sponsors of the Into the Mind podcast, and without Chisholm Hunter, we would not be sitting here today. Chisholm Hunter are a family-run jewelers that have been going for over 165 years. They stock a range of luxury watches from Tudor, Blancpain, Breguet, Vacheron Constantin, Omega, Tag Heuer, the list goes on and on and on. And they're world-renowned for their diamond rings and jewellery. So if you're wanting something for yourself or the missus, then head to chisholmhunter.co.uk. That's chisholmhunter.co.uk. Yeah, it's almost like the noise of the world is kind of stripped away and you can kind of really focus for a period of time.
I just think it gives you perspective. I really do. I think it's one of the benefits of doing these extreme sports, or doing expeditions, or even doing time in the forces, or doing any hard things. I think it just gives you a little bit of perspective in life on what really matters, but also you reset what is hard or what is bad, and therefore you're less likely to get upset by little piddly things that just do not fucking matter.
Yeah, I get it when I'm in the office. Like I do a lot of Monroes and hill walking and not half of it extreme as you, but I do quite a lot of that outdoorsy kind of stuff. And if I'm stuck in the office for too long, I end up getting so angry over like nothing. Whereas when I'm up at 3 a.m. climbing like 3 Monroes and then coming back, all of a sudden it's like a peace and clarity kind of like falls over you. Take me back to the army. You were in the para regiment, weren't you?
No, I was in. I spent most of my time at EOD, so bomb disposal. So I was in 409 Squadron, which is the Para Commando SF Support Squadron. So we had basically 3 troops within the a para troop, a commando troop, and a SF support. So a troop that supported mostly the guys in at Poole, doing sort of maritime stuff. So yeah, that's where I spent most of my time. And we also, well, the regiment was part of, which is 3-3 regiment. We supplied the Army's underwater bomb disposal team as well, which was kind of a part-time. It wasn't like your main job. You had a job, and then because we weren't used that often. So the Royal Navy clearance divers, their responsibility is everything from the high water mark and below, technically anything salty, and the Army team was responsible for from high water mark and above freshwater, so rivers, lakes, sewers. Unfortunately, it's always nice under London, but so yes, and the Army team was brought from not a lot of it came from 409, but the other squadrons within the regiment sort of made up the part-time kind of the dive team.
Yeah, and were you ever deployed?
Well, I did. Kosovo, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghan. I went back and forth to Northern Ireland, but that was nothing was even going on at that point. I did the Falklands in '97, though, so I'm sure it counts. Although that was the worst tour. It was boring. It was boring.
Yeah.
I'm always a bit worried what people think when I say this, but I used to love going on tour. Like I had again, it sounds really bad, but I had a great time in Iraq. I had a great time, loved it. But it comes back to that, I had a job and a duty, and I knew exactly what it was, and I had a purpose. I had a purpose in life. I knew exactly what it was, and everyone else knew. I didn't need thank yous. I didn't need, because I knew that everyone else around me knew what I was doing, and therefore, okay, it's cool. You don't need to be, you don't need to have all the chit chat. And it was hard. It was kind of peaks and troughs for us for EOD. It was like you'd get a week of nothing, and then you get like 72 hours of you just wouldn't sleep, be out on the ground the whole time. I think we had 7 teams. We had 5 RE teams, 2 RLC teams, and then we'd have one team that's either Army, Navy, or Air Force. And they were just like, as you might probably imagine, they were super busy. But it was peaks and it was like downtime. It wasn't a rolling thing. It was like nothing was happening for a week, and then suddenly it would just all kick off.
Yeah.
But and I had a pager, and I loved it. I was actually on a mobile phone in Iraq, but back at the unit we all had pagers, because it was very busy. There's now 2. There's now another RE bomb disposal regiment. It's one of the few parts of the army that's growing. But we were super busy at the time, so if you were on a page that was more than I think 24 hours notice to move, it just didn't count because we didn't the manpower to. So the 48 or 72 hour pages were like, they don't count. That doesn't count as a duty. So any one time I was carrying a 3 hours notice to move pager for the MTT, the Maritime Counter-Terror stuff, and then a 24 hour pager for the Airborne Task Force. Ideally, you shouldn't be carrying 2 at once, but we just did not have the qualified manpower to do that. And I think at one point I was doing a 30-minute notice to move for the duty that covered people finding World War II bombs in London, usually, get down construction sites, World War II bomb stuff. And the thing was, when I left the forces, they initially said, "Oh, we'll offer you a year in a train regiment, a cushy regiment." Realise how busy you've been. Also, because I've been on the MCT pager for like 2 years solid, I didn't take any leave.
Yeah.
And they were like sort of, it'll be 9 to 5 days a week. But cushy, like, no, you misunderstood me. I'm leaving because I can't keep doing what I was doing. I loved it. Like, I loved being on a pager. I loved it. I've been the 3 years notice to move or whatever it was, because it gave me purpose in life. It gave me a reason to kind of. To keep your skills up, to keep fit, to keep switched on, which I think when I left I slightly struggled with. that lack of direction and purpose.
Do you think that's something that people nowadays especially are struggling with? I'm just thinking of like, when I was a teenager, I definitely lacked purpose, and it's because I hadn't found that thing that I really, really enjoyed. And without videography and photography, I honestly don't know where I'd be, because that kind of was my purpose at that point. And I think so many people kind of get lost and they don't have that.
Yes, I think it's a massive issue. So, mental health is a massive topic right now, and has been for the last few years. And not to detract from that, but I think the idea that one solution fits everybody is a little bit naive and a little bit arrogant. And certainly, and this is not to discourage people, especially men, from talking, but talking doesn't do me any good, right? It's not my thing. And that's not just because I'm closed down in a bloke. It's like, doesn't do me any good. So I don't think the idea of opening up and speaking about all your problems is necessarily the right fit for everyone. There was who said it, but somebody says, you give a man a purpose and he'll crawl across broken glass with a smile. And I think that certainly with a lot of men out there, having a sense of purpose, a sense of usefulness, actually, outside themselves, can help a lot. We did a thing in one of the rescue organisations I work with. It's called SANA, the Severn Area Rescue Association. So we've got lifeboats and river flood rescue and cliff rescue and all that sort of stuff, and land search. We cover that a massive area of the UK. But anyway, point being is, sometimes you're dealing with either very badly injured or dead bodies, either from accidents or from suicide. We've got some bridges in our area and some cliffs and a lot of forested area that people use to commit suicide. So they did a welfare study just to make sure that the organisation was adequately supporting the volunteers who are going out and sort of dealing with these things. And it came back, it was all fine, but one of the things I brought up in one of the meetings was that what we shouldn't forget is the welfare or the mental health benefits of being part of SARA, not just the kind of impact. Because there's people I know, without mentioning names, that quite frankly I think would be struggling with life if they weren't part of this search and rescue organisation, and they do a huge amount for it, and they keep really busy because I think it gives them a sense of purpose, but also a sense of usefulness that they are, and I think they would struggle a great deal more if they weren't part. I think that the forces could be argued to be similar. Like I said, in Iraq, I was great. One of the great things was that I knew exactly what I had to do, and I knew that what I was doing was part of something that I was useful. So, and it, like you say, it could be. It's why I think a lot of these things, like a lot of people get into now, like things like triathlon or the CrossFit competitions, because it gives them a sort of purpose and a point. Now, I don't know how useful it is, but at least they've got some sort of goal. Because I mean, we are still animals, so. Again, just so people understand, I've got a little bit of credibility. My degree's in zoology, including human evolution, and I've got a master's in archaeology. So I've studied a little bit about human evolution. So we, as humans, are designed to be in tribes of, say, 80 to 90 people. And it's through natural selection, we would not survive in the natural world on our own. We're not designed to be solo animals. We're designed to be pack animals. Therefore, we need the group to want us in the group, because we want to stay in that group. So we are motivated to basically want to be liked and want to be felt of as useful. And therefore it's perfectly natural if you don't feel that you are useful to your either family or your community, whatever it is your sort of, what you would define as your tribe, then it makes sense that that's going to have a negative impact on you.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. I think, especially in a business setting, like you see so many people that are demotivated within business, it's probably because they aren't getting praised as much as they should. And also you see there's a stat, and I'm going to butcher this stat, so I don't want to say it, but there's a stat that was done on life expectancy. And they were measuring the life expectancy of people in the Mediterranean, and they were putting it down to olive oil and the diet. And there was somebody that came along and said, no, it's not olive oil over the diet. It's the community. They all go to church, the same time on a Saturday. They're all in tiny little towns where they can all mingle together and do activities together, whether that's bowling for the older ones or whatever it might be. Do you think that this age of kind of like social media, that the quote unquote social media is actually stripping socializing away in a really strange way. Like, I remember the days, and you'll remember this as well, when you went round to a friend's house and you'd ring the doorbell instead of calling them. And then you'd speak to their mum for a second just to see if little Davy was in, and then you'd go and speak to Davy. Whereas now you'll call them being like, yeah, I'm outside, by the way.
Mate, if you even call them, you're doing well. Most people just, communicate by text now. So it's not even, it's calling them. Yes, I mean, it's the old social media. The more connected we are, the lonelier we feel, it seems to be in today's society. I'm 100% on board with the fact I think we are, or certain parts of say in the West, we are getting more and more separated from a kind of natural environment. And that it's partly the natural environment, like, there's no doubt about it. Having a walk on the beach or a walk through a forest, you feel better,
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone saying, I went for a walk amongst the trees and I felt worse. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I also think that we are, and it's how the world is, and we're not going to change this, but a lot of us are living in a very unnatural environment. So, for example, like London, people will say, Londoners, really unfriendly. And I'm like, no, it's not the people, it's the place. So, outside my window right now is the Office Dyke Path, which is a long distance path that runs all the border of England and Wales, and it's a nature reserve as well. People walk their dogs there all the time, right? I'm the other kids. I say good morning to somebody. 100% of the time, they'll say good morning back. 100% of the time. Now, you take someone from the tube in London and you stick them on the Office Dyke Path, and I say good morning to them, I guarantee you they'll say good morning back. You take somebody from this environment, you take me, for example, and you stick me on the tube in London, and I am just as closed down and kind of, unfriendly as everyone else on the tube. It's not the person, it's the place. We're designed to live in tribes of 80, 90, maximum 120 people. Like, therefore, that's probably the maximum people you can actually properly know and know who they are, know their name. London's got what, 7, 8 million people now? We're not designed to live in concrete or in that size of a place. Nor are we designed to communicate with, it's like with Facebook, it's like, I've got 50,000 friends. I can get 50,000 friends. I've got about 10 if I'm lucky, you know what I mean? So I think that is, the bottom line is, it's very hard to fight your nature. Aye. And we are still animals. A lot of it, we are still animals, so we're designed to be in trees, on beaches, in mountains. Like you said just before about feeling better when you're not walking on Monroe's. That's not just because it's hard. It's probably elements of, it's also physical exercise, which releases dopamine, makes you feel better and helps you kind of physically and mentally. And the fact you're walking in nature, I mean, there growing evidence, scientific evidence, especially for places like Japan and I think the US, but Japan started it all, about the positive impact that can be had, a measurable impact that can be had on your immune system by simply sitting under a tree.
Wow.
But it makes sense. Like, biologically, It makes sense from an evolutionary point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think that's there's an interesting flip in your career, because obviously working amongst the military, you do have that tribe, right? You have like that group of guys that you're very, very close with. Your brothers in arms, you all have each other's back, you all know each other's purpose. But then you have this flip of going into the kind of professional cave diver route, which, as you said, you could spend 3 days underwater on your own. What was that kind of flip?
Yeah, well, there's still, when I left the forces, I was doing more sort of expeditionary type stuff, and there's a kind of community there. It's more because a lot of people who are on their own need to hang out. So if I would have think of the Friday afternoon club, because I was driving through Bristol one time, and I was like, bloody hell, is there something on today? Because it's like, there's just loads of people out on the pavements outside the pubs. I was like, that's really, what the hell? It sounds like some sort of, the coronation or something. And I realised it was like 4:30 on a Friday. So, because if you freelance and work in that weird way. So I'd mates who were like, wildlife cameramen and professional climbers and expedition guides and all that stuff. So we started thinking of the Friday afternoon club, where if you're in, because Bristol was a hub at one point for that stuff. If you're back home at that point in Bristol, we'd all meet at the pub on Friday afternoon and kind of pretend we were all finishing work. I always have a kind of end of work beer. But certainly when I was doing TV documentary stuff, when I was presenting a lot, you feel very isolated there because no one's got your back, no one at all. Which is why when I first started working in stunts, like kind of movie stunts, that was the one thing I think I appreciated the most, was the people in the community. Don't me wrong, the job, super cool, right? Loads of fun. Doesn't pay that badly, I'll admit. But it was the first time since leaving the forces I kind of felt at home. I could always go, cool, I've got these boys and girls have got my back.
Yeah.
And even if there's people that, you might not get on with, might be your best mate, you might not really be desperate to go to the pub with them, that if you said to them, mate, I'm about to do X, Y, and Z, can you check my harness? They'll check your harness, and they'll do as good a job of that as it would be if it was their own son. So yeah, the sort of the BS, the British Stunt Register, and the stunt community within the UK, which isn't very big, is the first time I felt like when I was back in the forces, like I had a group of people around me, and you could pitch up to a set, and there'd be a stunt guy, a stunt lass there who never met before in my life. Be like, cool, I know who and what you are, just because of the fact you're here and you have got, you're part of the BSR, and therefore I'm good. I'm good to stand next to you, just like I would have been if it was somebody from 49 Squadron. So that was, I think, the thing that I loved most and still appreciate most about the stunt community in the UK.
And do you think presenting that was a lot more lonely? Was it because it was a lot more of a sharky kind of industry? People were trying to get your job and...
No, not supposed to. I mean, I had a lot of mates that are presenters and still are, like loads, better than me. And they were good because we were doing things together. They were always like, right, I'm going to try, they were always trying to make you better, make you look better. So I found a lot of camaraderie actually from other presenters. So the exact opposite, actually. They were like, all people I work with were always trying to make you better and make you and bring you up. It was more just usually you're on these, like, especially with the sort of the adventure stuff that I used to do. You'd have a cameraman, sound man, researcher, director, that kind of the small teams, maybe bigger, and they cared about making the program. They cared about pleasing the boss, whatever it was, getting the shot. They didn't care about you. Then no one was really watching your back. No one was looking out for you. And if you end up looking like an idiot, as long as they thought it was good telly, that's fine.
So they all had their own agenda, kind of thing.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I've got some really good mates I still have who work in like wildlife and adventure TV. I mean, it's not like they're all terrible, but it's just the nature of the thing that's like no one's really got your back. Wasn't, again, coming to stunts, the team's got your back, and the stunt coordinator is looking after your safety. Sometimes on the TV documentary stuff, I always had to look after my own safety, which means you're the one that's got to say no to something, and that can be very hard. It's much easier for a stunt coordinator to come in to a director or producer and say, no, he's not doing that, it's too dangerous, I'm not having it. Again, I was shooting something a few weeks ago, and I had to throw this table through a window. So I'm trying to work out how to throw this table through a window. So I picked it up and I kind of practiced and practiced again. And one of the other guys came across to me, actually, who's another ex-army guy. He came across and went, mate, it looks naff. What you're doing there it just looks a bit rubbish. I was like, do you think? He went, yeah. He goes, look, mate, just run up, pick the fucking table up and throw it through the window. I was like, yeah, he's right. But I mean, it didn't serve him anything to help me out. Like, he wasn't gonna. It did him no favors to help me out, make me look better. But he did it anyway because he's like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna watch your back. And then the cameras rolled. I run up, hit the table, threw it through the window, looked amazing.
Yeah.
So there's that sort of thing that people are there to help you out, not because there's some sort of transaction happening, but just because they're like, well, I'm not gonna let you look stupid or mess this up. I've got your back.
Yeah.
So,
no, absolutely.
And that's a nice way to be, and it comes back to that idea of tribe, having a tribe around you that is going to look after you.
Yeah, and I think that the military does instill that in people. Even I had a meeting literally half an hour before I was meeting with you, a guy called Richard. He's an ex-sniper for the military, and he served for like 12 years. And they're all a huge community. All the military boys, they all help each other out. They all try and promote each other. They all try and get each other jobs and gigs because they are that really tight-knit community. Take me to James Bond, because that is mental. James Bond's real-life stunt double.
No. Well, no. I mean, I was just part of the stunt department. There's a lot of different people involved in that. That was my first opportunity. So that came about because sometimes life's shit, but sometimes the shit bits of life turns out to be, in hindsight, a good thing, if you're in the right perspective. So 2016, 17 were great years for me. I was doing loads of telly stuff. It was all cool. Did like was diving this Britannic, and we made a series up in Orkney, and that was all great. Did a kids TV series. It was brilliant. Had a computer game made about me. It was amazing. And then 2018 comes along. A series doesn't get commissioned, another series doesn't get recommissioned, and basically I'm just out of work and the phone is not ringing, and it's all bad. So started 2019. The phone rings. A mate of mine, one of my best mates from sort of the diving world, who's a top kind of underwater cameraman. He said, "Look, I know, because I used to do a lot of safety diving for TV and film and that sort of stuff." And he said, "Look, I know you don't do really any sort of safety diving anymore, but I'm on a job in Norway for 3 weeks, and I need somebody who can sort of do a bit of underwater construction. Got some stuff to build, scaffold, not easy stuff, but a bit of underwater construction. Can operate a camera, knows how to light stuff." We're diving under ice, and we need to be on rebreathers. So rebreather is a specialist unit that doesn't produce any bubbles because you just recycle one breath. And he said, like, there's very few people who can tick all those boxes. And if you're up for it, And I was like, mate, 100%. Couple of weeks diving with you. It's like, great. I'm being paid to go dive with my mate. It's money in the bank. Like, let's put your ego to one side and just get on with trying to earn some money. So it turned out that was No Time to Die. And I'd been looking at stunts for years, but from the outside, it's a bit of a closed shop. It's one of those things you think, I don't know how to get into this. It's a really, once you're in it, it's much easier. And people have asked me since, and I've helped quite a few people start their journey to get into stunts, because it is an easier thing to work out once you've already achieved it, like most things. So I thought it was right. Here's my plan. I'm going to spend 3 weeks here. I'll try and do the best job I can. And at the end of it, I'll speak to the dive supervisor and say, look, how would one begin to trying to break into the stunt world? But on like day 3, the dive supervisor was a guy called Dave Shaw, who runs the U Stage. He said, we're chatting, and he said, oh, mate, with all your stuff, all your diving and free diving and your ex-military and all your climbing and mountaineering qualifications and your skydiving qualifications, have you never thought about like doing stunts? And I was like, well, actually, yeah, I was going to try and speak to this at the end. And he said, right, no worries, leave it with me. I'll speak to the stunt coordinator and we'll see where it goes. I was like, cool. I thought, right, that's the last time I hear that, because I used to hear that in telly all the time, like in documentaries. Don't call us, we'll call you. That'd be it. So like, whatever. So the next day, Dave comes back to me and says, right, I spoke to Lee. Don't approach him. He'll approach you when he's ready, but he'll come up to at some point in the ice. He'll come up to you. He's going to have a chat with you. I was like, okay, right, whatever. We'll see. Same day, Lee Morrison, and now a mate of mine, absolute legend, came up and we had a little chat. And he said, could you just give me a one-page of all the stuff you think is relevant, that you've kind of qualification experience you've got? So I sent that to him that night. He had a chat with people he needed to chat to. And then that was kind of it. I was like, okay, cool, well, just sit back and see. Came to the end of the job, that was it. And then I got a phone call from Lee after I came back and said, oh, can you come down to meet some people? So I went and did that. And then I did another few little bits and pieces. I'm never really sure what I should speak about with films, because there's a kind of, to put it, there's a kind of culture of humility within stunts. The stunts tend to be there to support the actors and the action and the directors and that stuff. They're not there to, for awards and that sort of stuff. They do their thing and then they go home. So I did a few other bits and pieces, and then literally got a phone call from Lee saying, okay, this was on the Friday. Do you want to come to Jamaica on Monday as like the underwater stunt guy? And I was like, I'll go on then. You know what I mean? He's like, I was like, do you want to come? You're offering me a job as a stuntman on a Bond film for 4 weeks in Jamaica. All right then. And that was it. And I stayed on, and then I did some absent, like some rope stuff and some military stuff, and then the underwater bits and pieces. Mostly in support, just supporting and bits and pieces like that, and do some testing. But that was an incredible year. And within weeks of that, if I remember, so a really good mate of mine called Dave Grant, he is actually a legend in stunts. He's done all. He's been Bond. He's been Assassin's Creed. He's kind of done it all. This is days after meeting him. And I said before, so I think it's 12 of us in Jamaica initially from the stunt department, and all like super motivated, super professional, super capable, very talented individuals, but all the nicest people you'll ever meet. And I was sat on a beach with Dave. At work, this was on set, but it's Jamaica. So this is what you do, and I mean, it's still probably the best job I've ever had. So I kind of peaked early. I was like, right, how do I? This is what I want to do. And again, because the people are like, I want to hang out with you guys more. What do I need to do? And he explained to me how one gets in the British Stunt Register, and I was like, right. So as soon as I got back to the UK, I started training, and I carried on with Bond. I think we finished it in November 19, and then I had to take a few more boxes over the next couple of years to finish off certain disciplines like martial arts and that to get in the stunt register, and then I got in the stunt register, and that's kind of what I do part of the time anyway. Yeah,
that's insane. So what kind of stunts did you do in Bond?
So again, there's an NDA. I don't know what we can and can't speak about, but most of it was support stuff. Like a lot of time you're doing testing, you're doing safety for actors, doing some training with the other stunt guys. I did a bit of abseiling, and we did some explosion stuffs and a bit of military style bits and pieces with weapons. But I mean, there's things you do that everyone assumes that you're just getting set in the fire the whole time. So in Matera, which is the Italian place that we shot, that was all cars and bikes. Yeah. So there's nothing for me to do. There's no skydiving or diving or military stuff there. I mean, since then I've learned. I've done course and done a lot of training for stunt driving. At the time, I wasn't a stunt driver. I could barely do a handbrake turn. But because of my ropes background in rope rescue and climbing and mountaineering guiding, that sort of stuff, I went along to do a lot of the rigging. So you're still kind of part of the stunt department, but you're not getting blown up or getting shot. You're not on camera. You're behind the camera rigging stuff, hanging off bridges and rigging ropes, which is still great fun. Still hanging out in the sunshine, with the stunt guys. But so the job does vary quite a bit. But then other days, you could be in Belfast on How to Train Your Dragon, dressed up like a Viking, doing and getting swung around on wires. So it's cool. I've got to say, it's still, even 5 years on, it's still cool. It's still good fun.
Who is James Bond to you?
But who is he to me? I don't know. I mean, I grew up. I mean, I've seen all the films. Who's to me? He's one of these kind of iconic characters. That's a difficult question. I mean, it's just good telly, isn't it? Good. It's still cinematic. Like there's very few characters, like especially non-superhero characters, that have lasted for 60. I think we're on 60 years now.
Yeah. And they keep getting better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, certainly originally, I was a Sean Connery guy. I grew up with Roger Moore, but I didn't really like that slightly kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of take on it. I preferred, because Connery always played it a bit more ruthless. Because in the books, if anybody's ever read the books, he's not really a spy. He's a government assassin. He's that's what he is. He's an assassin more than a spy, and he's a sociopath, kind of alcoholic. And I think Connery played him a bit more ruthless and a bit more kind of free of guilt. And Timothy Dalton, I thought it'd been great. Timothy Dalton didn't make more films because he did it again. He brought that back. I mean, at the end of his second film, he set a guy on fire alive just for the hell of it, pretty much. That's a pretty harsh thing to do. And then I think Daniel Craig brought that back. I mean, I went to cinema to see Casino Royale when it first came out, and I was like, bloody hell, that was awesome. That was awesome. He made a cracking job of it. Yeah. He made a cracking job of it. So, and we've got posters of Bond posters up in our kitchen. Actually, not mine, they're Mrs. My wife's. That she's had since she was 18. But so we've had those up, and they've been up for years and years and years. Yeah. We now have a No Time to Die poster, to be fair, which she got me for Christmas one year. But yeah, the whole thing was a pretty was a pretty incredible experience. And it was like, oh, I was a very, very small part of and probably the kind of the least. Well, I was the least experienced person on that team. To be a small part of that and hang out with the guys and girls was pretty cool.
And did you meet Daniel Craig at all?
Yeah, yeah.
How was he? Was he a cool guy?
Genuinely. What I can only speak from personal experience, but yeah, he was a really, really nice lad, very down to earth, normal kind of bloke. Like, actually, he likes Liverpool Football Club. We had conversations. Again, I think it was me, him, and Dave Grant stood in the pool of the Eusted underwater stage. And you're in the water all day, and even though it's warm, you still end up like burning a lot of calories. You get hungry, but you can't get out of the water to eat, and you can't eat in the pool. So by 9 o'clock at night, everybody's starving. I think the three of us were having a long conversation between takes about what we're going to have for dinner. And I think he was like fish and chips. He's a fish and chips guy, likes Liverpool Football Club, and genuinely, he's a sort of bloke you just meet down the pub. He's not naive to his position, but. What I also I think I like is that he's got no social media presence. He's an actor. He went to Guildhall. He got into acting to act, not to get rich and famous. I mean, that's how it ended up. But he's a proper trained actor, and he's not on social media. He's got no Instagram, no Twitter, no Facebook account. He turns up. He does his acting. That's his profession. That's his job. And he goes home to his family. Yeah. I mean, I didn't spend that much time with him, but that was my impression of the small amount of time I spent with him. Yeah, nice lad.
Is it not incredible that this is something that I really hope that a lot more people experience, and if they listen to this podcast, they kind of take from this podcast. There are jobs out there that do not feel like jobs. A bit like you were saying, like you were sitting on the beach in Jamaica and you were thinking, I'm getting paid for this. It's this incredible thing where a community comes together. You're getting paid for something that you love to do so much. You probably would have done it for free. Like I worked in Finland recently, and I had a 2-week project in Finland, and it was just honestly hanging about with the boys. You'd go back at night, you'd get on the fire, you go into the sauna, and then you'd go and shoot the Northern Lights at night, photography wise. But there's jobs out there that legitimately just don't feel like work. So like, if you love what you do, you don't really work a day in your life. It's that old saying, but it's kind of true.
Yeah, I think the reality is, though, that even the stuff you love can require a great deal of effort. So as much as I love or love, and I make some living from doing the adventure stuff. I mean, it's supposed to be, especially the adventure stuff, most of it's great to have done, but not great to do. It's pretty
hard
shit to do. Yeah, but it's great afterwards, but not during the time. Again, stunts, peaks and troughs, like. It's incredibly hard to get on the British Stunt Register. It was a lot harder. Anybody who's gone on the British Stunt Register has probably spent years and years and years attaining the skills to the level they're required to register. And even after that, again, the industry peaks and troughs. We had strikes last year. You can be months and months out of work. So you have to be able to cope with the stresses and the unpredictability and instability financially of this type of work. And then sometimes on set, you're working your balls off all day, and it's not fun. You're humping and dumping crash mats all day, or things like that. It's not always just getting the cool costumes and doing cool gags. There's a lot of other stuff and stress that goes with it. So it's not always fun. I think you can love a job in general, with the understanding that sometimes specifically it's going to be rubbish.
Aye.
And those are the times you kind of, I think you earn your money. That and the fact that sometimes, again, in stunts, you have to do things that carry a degree of risk.
Yeah.
And you accept that. People always saying, like, don't get into stunts and then complain about getting bruises. Because, I mean, you're going to get banged up. Hopefully, the idea is not to get, like, badly injured, but, you're going to get bumps and scrapes and that. There's no point getting into stunts and complaining that you've bumped your toe.
Have you ever had any bad injuries while doing stunts, or any of the other kind of adventure elements that you do?
No, I've got quite a few injuries from the forces, knees and back mainly, but that's just because the sort of stuff that most people in certain elements of the forces do. So if you run up and down hills with boots and big rucksacks on, big baggins on, then you know your knees and your back and all that takes a bit. It's not good for you. In stunts, I've been pretty lucky. I've had knocks here and there, but the only one that was, in fact, the worst I've ever had was I took a knock beginning of 2 years ago now, would have been. I think, yeah, but like February 22, where I was doing something all day. It was me and another guy. We'd fallen, hit with this big sort of wave, and then fall into this sort of pit. Anyway, doing it all day, and then towards the end, the wave caught me. I landed wrong, and I hit my shoulder on a sort of bar, and basically popped my AC joint. So your collarbone, where it attached to the shoulder, popped.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that bad. I mean, it took quite a while to heal, only because at that point, you know, you're in your late 40s and things just take a little bit longer to heal than they would otherwise. But that's the worst. I mean, you know, that's the worst I've had. I've been pretty lucky. You know, I know a lot of people who've been injured far worse. You know, some life changing, which is why, as I say, that the stunt community and the stunt coordinators, they're well, the job's twofold. One is to get the action that's going to look incredible to support the film and the actor and the director and whatever else, but also to keep everyone, and not just the stunt department, but also the crew and everything else that's involved in the film to keep everyone safe. So, you know, we're looking to kind of hopefully have no one injured very badly. But, you know, you can say it, you're going to take the odd knock now and then. That's part of the job.
It's the risk, isn't it? It's the risk involved. Do you think... I kind of wanted to ask you this question, and I've wanted to ask you this question for a while, actually. We were actually thinking of doing something with you a while ago. I've kind of followed your Instagram for ages, and
it's all lies. Social media, it's all lies.
So is mine, don't worry.
Yeah, it's all lies. It's all Photoshop and CGI.
I was wondering, do you think that throughout your life, through the different things that you've been successful in, would you consider yourself driven, or do you think that you are dragged? Do you think that you're running from something that happened in your past, or do you think that you're actually driven to do these things?
I don't think I'm running from anything. I'm pretty driven. Now that doesn't always mean that I'm driven by the right things. You know, you're driven by the fact that you want your friends or your communities to respect you. That you want to impress your friends and your community, that you want your kids to be proud of you, that I think also that you want to be able to look at yourself in the mirror. So depending on what standard you've set for yourself will depend on how short you fall, and therefore how big that gap is, and therefore how driven you are to try and, you know, I think what's one of the there's flip sides to every coin. So, you know, if you are massively ambitious, the chances are you also never be satisfied. So if you set hugely high standards for yourself, the upside is that you will try and attain those standards. Even if you fall short, you're still going to do really, really well. The problem is you're probably going to fall short, so you're probably going to be disappointing yourself continually. So it's a bit of a, you know, a balancing game with trying to be, if you set yourself very high standards, but be forgiving to yourself if you don't meet them. What am I driven? I don't know really what. That's a hell of a deep question. You should have emailed that a week ago and given me some thought. I mean, I think, and it's going to sound very, very cliched and twee, but I think I'm driven by a desire. Certainly, once upon a time, was desire to be happy, you know. But we've then got to work out what actually makes you happy, because often what you think was going to make you happy, like loads of money, isn't actually what's going to make you happy. But also, for a time, I was just looking for the end of the race. Like everyone was working towards. You know, right? When can I stop? When can I rest? When can I just take my foot off the gas? And I've kind of realised two things. One, you can't. It's as simple as that. You know, sitting out in the world that I live in, you can't, because if I did that, then the phone would stop ringing, and I've got a mortgage to pay and kids to feed. But also, there is more contentment in the climb up the hill than there is sitting on top of the hill, frankly. And there's been time in my life where I felt almost like, cool, we'll come back, but I know what I need to do. So when I came back from Jamaica, and I spoke to another guy in the team, a guy called James Embry, and said, right, well, how do I get some of the stuff I need to do for the British Stunt Register? And he's like, right, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that. That's what you need to do. it gets a bit like being back on one of the selection courses in the forces, where like P company, whatever it is, when they're like, right, these are the things you've got to do. If you do all these things, you've passed. It's simple as that. We're not trying to hide the things from you. These are the things you need to do. Pass this, and you win, and you pass. Fail these things, and you don't pass. Simple as that. Same about Stunt Ranger. It's all written down. Here are the things you need to do. Do these things, and you will be in. Done. So the next two and a bit years is like, right, that's my focus. I now have lines in the sand that I have to meet. And that's very stress relieving, because normally in life it's all a bit, especially like TV documentaries. Do you want to be a successful TV presenter? Well, it's kind of a bit ish. It's a bit grey. You could do your series could do really well, but the commissioner that day has just decided that they don't like you for whatever reason. Yesterday a Scottish bloke kicked their dog, so now they don't like Scottish people, so now they're not going to commission a show. It can be as fickle as that. It really is ridiculous. Whereas when you've there's I think, again, there's a level of kind of peacefulness that comes with knowing exactly what you need to do, exactly what you need to do, where the line is, where the goals are. But the contentment comes in the work and the climb towards those goals. Once you've achieved those goals, you're like, all right, what's next? Because suddenly there's a big hole in your life. It's the way things you call this post-exped blues. So you'd organise a big expedition, right? You'd have a big project. You're going to go and find the lost city of Atlantis, wherever it was, right? Off you go. Spend months planning it and researching it. You'd do the expedition, but it'd all be high press. You'd manage it. You'd pull it off. You'd discover Atlantis, all great. You'd come back, and then you'd be a little bit down, because you're like, oh, okay, what next? So, and people, again, I found out in the forces. I did the Army dive course, which is a pretty arduous course. Finished that. I wasn't elated. I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do now? And you look around and you go, okay, I'll go and do P company. So I think I like the idea of stopping, but the reality is, if I do, it's not good for me.
And do you think that's because it's the unknown, and that you don't have that kind of tick box exercise where it's like, if I achieve these things, I can do X? Whereas when sometimes in life the answers aren't transparent. What you need to do isn't seeable. You can't see it.
Yeah, there's definitely frustration in that when you've got the drive to achieve something, but you don't really know how to go about doing it, because there is no fixed path. But it's also the fact that you have to keep driving forward, I think, because it's the old, if you slow down, you go down. Like, no one should retire. No one should retire. It's very, very bad for your health. You can retire from your job, by all means, crack on, take a pension, enjoy life, but find a reason to get out of bed. Write a book, become a professional sports person. If you're going to sail the world, fine, but just sitting around doing nothing mentally and physically is not good for you. Again, it comes back to, if you haven't got a purpose, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. I think
and I've sorry.
No, go ahead.
I've seen it personally with relatives of mine, so I've got first-hand experience of this. When they stopped, they went dramatically downhill, and for a brief period where they were given responsibility again, their decline slowed down and they started to pick back up again. And then when that responsibility was taken away, the decline, mental decline happened again. So, the brain and the body is something that, if you stop using it, it'll just start shutting down. So do not retire. That's my advice.
It's funny you say that, because I was actually going to say something very, very similar. My gran went into an old folks home during COVID, and during COVID, no one could really see her, so she wasn't socializing, and she didn't have a purpose. And after a kind of year of not seeing her because of COVID, I went to see her, and she had gone so dramatically downhill due to, I believe, one, not having a purpose, and two, being alone and not being able to socialize. I truly believe, and my dad's a firm believer in this as well, he'll never retire, and he's as sharp as a tack. I mean, he's almost 70, and he's outsmarting me at everything he does. And I think that's kind of it's a good ethos to have in life, is always have a purpose and never retire. Because I think you're right. As soon as you do retire, you just deteriorate. Your muscles deteriorate, or your brain deteriorates because you're not using it. It's almost like when you don't go to the gym, you don't use your muscles, they deteriorate. Same with your brain. It's just it's going to keep slipping the more that you don't use it, if that makes sense.
I know a mate of mine, Roger Holt, who is a skydiver, and he is 78 years old, and he still skydives. And he's been skydiving since the 60s, like when it was properly dangerous. And the reason he still skydives is because he still skydives. That's why. If he was to stop, and he found this during COVID, actually, seen the same thing during COVID, he couldn't skydive, but he lives on the south coast of like Devon. He was out running, cycling, or sea kayaking every day. Just kept doing it. Yeah. And he said a lot of his friends who he's the skydiver guys of similar age, after COVID, they never came back because they didn't do enough during COVID to keep themselves going, whereas he was straight back in the plane, up he went. And again, I know guys who are cavers, wiry, fit guys in their late 70s, and again, they say the same thing. The reason I can still, go caving in my 70s is because I started caving at 15 and never stopped. And as long as I don't stop, I'll be okay.
Yeah. How was COVID for you?
Like most things, mate, peaks and troughs. The first lockdown, actually, I really enjoyed. As I say, we lived in the middle of a forest, a relatively big garden, because we're in the middle of nowhere, so it's cheap. So we had a great. The weather was amazing, wasn't it? It was not this year. The weather was amazing at kind of April 2020. So I really enjoyed it, and again, stressed. Like financially, it wasn't too bad because we'd finished Bond in 2019, and I wasn't spending any of the money I was earning because I think I was slightly still couldn't believe I was doing the job and getting paid. So that all just went in the bank and sat there. So I had the finances in the bank, and we've got super low overheads. My wife's a jazz musician, which is like the only kind of job that is less financially stable than mine. So we've always got super low overheads, little mortgage and all that stuff, and we had a cushion in the bank. So we're like, cool, we can survive this, not a problem at all. So the first lockdown, it was cool. It was just hanging out with my wife and the kids in the garden in the sunshine. It was all good. My wife, she was an ex-teacher, so she did a bit of teaching with the kids, but the kids were super young anyway, so it wasn't really an issue. And then the second lockdown was, especially because we live on the English-Welsh border, so we, in England and Wales, locked down at two different times for the second lockdown, and we were hit by both. So it was another couple of months for us, which was getting a little bit dull. The last lockdown, I was meant to be on a stunt job in the Caribbean, and it got in just after Christmas, and it got canned. And then, so I was going to miss Brexit, I was going to miss the third lockdown, all good. And then that got canned, which was a bit of a blow, which meant I had to stay at home in the winter for so by the third lockdown, the joke was well and truly over. I wasn't finding it funny anymore. I was bored of the whole thing. The coffers were drying up. It's dark, cold, wet, and miserable. I'm like, okay, this is. I'm bored. This is no longer funny. So that was. But what was good though, to be fair, I continued training. So the two sort of disciplines that I needed to complete my application for British Stunt Wrestler was stunt horse riding and martial arts. Because I'd built a gym in my back garden in 2018, and there's stables about a few miles from my house, I could still train both those disciplines. And with martial arts, I was pretty much training full time. In the sense of training like a good hour, 7 days a week. There's nothing else to do. And then when things started to open up between lockdowns, horse riding was one of the things you could do because you could be 30 metres from your instructor. It was fine, one-on-one. You'd be in a horse, they'd be stood around, it was fine. So that came. So again, I was doing a lot of that. So the positives were I got to hang out with my family more than I would normally, but also I had a lot of time to train as well.
Would you be nervous if your kids go down the same route in terms of skydiving and kind of?
No. I mean, the thing is, skydiving is genuinely a very safe sport. You look at the stats and action report. It's much safer than most other sports. It really is, because it's probably the most heavy police sport in the country, because it comes under the Civil Aviation Authority. So you can go and buy some dive kit off eBay and go cave diving tomorrow. Now you probably die, but that's on you. Crack on. Skydiving, not at all. So it's policed by the same people that police Heathrow, right? So for you to get in a jump plane, that plane has to be insured, has to be like MOT'd, the pilots have an in-date license and an in-date medical. The drop zone after all these, like all the paperwork, the risk assessments, the insurance in place, the correctly qualified individuals to run that drop zone and manage it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You turn up to a drop zone, they look at your logbook when you last jumped, your qualification, and all that sort of stuff. Then look at your equipment, make sure it's fit for purpose. That your reserve parachute has been repacked within the last 6 months by an advanced rigger. So like basically has had a 6-monthly MOT. Make sure all your equipment is correct, and the skydive you're about to do is appropriate to your level of equipment and all that sort of stuff. Only then can you get in the jump plane. So there are a lot of checks and balances that will happen of equipment and paperwork and qualifications from everybody involved before you're allowed to exit an aircraft. Because of that, it's a very, very safe sport. It really is. Well, it's a very, very safe sport if you do it properly, if you do it correctly. And so is cave diving. Cave diving, most flooded caves are very predictable, stable environments. They really are. Right? People think, it's going to cave. Things don't cave in. Right? They just don't. But it's a very unforgiving pursuit in the sense that it's binary. So with skydiving, things can go wrong, and you could twist an ankle, you could break a leg, you could break your back, you could be unconscious, be in a coma, you could die. There's a graduation of potential kind of problems or outcomes. With cave diving, no one gets injured cave diving. It either goes well and you come out, it goes badly but you fix it and you come out, it goes badly, you don't fix it and you don't come out. There's no really middle ground. So although if you do it properly, you've got the right skills, right kit, the right plan, all that stuff. If you do it properly, cave diving can be very, very safe. It can be. But it can be unforgiving if you don't do it properly. So by all means, go cave diving and please go skydiving, but just do them properly.
Do you have kind of a fear of small spaces? I obviously have this really irrational fear of small spaces. It's claustrophobia. I don't really know why I have it, but I suppose being a cave diver, you kind of need to eradicate that. Did you ever have any kind of fear like that?
No, not really. You kind of, because it's, most of the time it's perceived over actual risk. So you're in a small space, so the perceived risk by a lot of people is like, oh my God, what's the actual risk to you? Just stop a second. What's the actual risk? What's going to happen here? I'm stuck. No, you got in, you can back out. Okay, if you got in, you can get back out. And even if you're stuck, all right, unless the thing's flooding, you're going to be all right. You'll get out. Somebody will pull you out. This is where people go wrong with when it comes to risk, is that they don't think about it. They kind of just react instinctively. And skydiving is a really good example. That's why I use it when I'm doing talks on the subject. So you jump out of an aircraft, and it's very loud, and it's very noisy, and it's very fast, and you are falling out of the sky at least 120 miles an hour, right? Or you're doing a speed skydive, for me, 270 odd. If you're Marco Het, like 250. But anyway, so 350. Screaming towards the earth, right? Okay, it's all noise, and then you get to your height, and it's your first skydiving. Your instructor says, "Go, pull." So you pull your parachute, and your parachute, will it open? Will it open? It opens beautifully and perfectly above your head, and you relax. You think, thank God, okay. And the world goes quiet. You're drifting with the wind. It's all nice and slow, and you're calm, and you're okay because you're safe. And you're wrong because you've just started the dangerous bit. Like, no one gets injured in free fall. It's stupid. I'm sure somebody will find an example on Google, but no one gets injured for free fall, right? The vast majority, if you look at the USP, the American, the British Parachute Association's incident reports for the last 15 years, say, the vast majority of accidents happen under good canopies. Okay, it's the main canopy opened, right, absolutely fine. Most accidents happen during the canopy flight because of people either do stupid things, they're not paying attention, or they're letting their ego pilot the canopy, not common sense. They do sort of silly things too close to the ground, which cause basically crashes. So the bit that seems scary, free fall bit, is actually pretty safe, and the bit that seems nice and gentle and peaceful and safe, the bit under canopy on your parachute, is actually the dangerous bit. So yeah, the idea is people need to sort of look at where the actual risks are, not just what perceived risks are. So it comes back to claustrophobia. People go, "Oh, I'm scared because I'm in a tight space." Why are you scared? Because I'm in a tight space. No. That's a description of a location. What's the problem? What's the danger? What's the threat? And usually there isn't one.
What are you scared of?
I think I'm more scared of having a bad reputation than than anything physical. Because people like to say, I don't care what everyone's thinking about me. Yeah, you do. Again, it's a natural human
Instinct.
kind of evolutionary
Yeah.
trait. I care what people think about me. I don't care necessarily what the world thinks of me. I care about what the people in my little universe think about me. So I care about what the stunt community thinks about me. I care about what the skydiving community thinks about me, the diving community. My mates in the search and rescue groups and my mates in the village. The people that I actually will have at least first or second hand contact with. So I care about doing something or not doing something that worries me, because I'm not a perfect human being, and I've made a lot of mistakes in the past. And you kind of worry, like, Christ, what impact has that had on the people that whose opinion I care about. But other than that, I get scared by exactly the same stuff that everyone else does. Like, does skydiving scare me? Well, not anymore, but only because I've learnt how to do it correctly. The idea of falling out of the sky without a parachute, yeah, fucking terrifies me. That's why I make sure I've got a very good parachute, know how to work it. Does drowning scare me? Fucking right it does. Which is why when I go cave diving, I've got loads of redundant kit and I make sure I do it properly. So, yeah, I get scared of the same stuff as everyone else. And in fact, with kids, I've got 2 little kids, and a sister mate of mine whose wife's pregnant, and I'm not sure if I should have said this or not, but it's like, mate, welcome to a world where you will, how do I put it? I put it better on this bit. Welcome to a world where you will be scared forever, because you're always worried about them. You can always, your paranoia can run riot sometimes. But you've just got to but I'm very up for, you got to let kids do risky things. You got to let kids wander in the forest on their own. They've got to learn that way. You've got to let them light fires and throw knives, even though you can see the possible consequences, because you can't cover them in cotton wool, because eventually the world's a risky place, and if you don't allow them to learn the tools that will allow them to deal with risk and danger and threat when it inevitably rears its head in their life, they will not have the tools to deal with it. So, you need to raise survivors, not snowflakes.
And I think we're kind of living in especially, I can't think the generation probably just below me. I like to think just below me are that kind of more snowflake mentality. I mean, I've managed people before, and you say something that they don't like, and they'll cry. And I've never, maybe it was just the way that I was brought up, but I've never, when someone says I've done something wrong, if they're correct, I will do my utmost to prove them wrong the next time. Whereas some people they just don't want the criticism now. It's like, it is this kind of like snowflake culture.
Well, it comes back to doing hard things. You do hard things, it builds a degree of mental resilience and robustness. And that can only be a good thing. Like getting offended or getting triggered or getting upset about everything, piddly little things just do not matter. It's like, that's not good for you. It's not good for anyone. There's no upside to that. There's no upside to that. So if you do things that build mental resilience and mental robustness, it can only be a good thing. And also I think it comes with a certain degree of affirmation. Like my boys, and my wife's really good at this as well. They fall over. It's like, you're fine, up you get. It's like, oh my God, it's like, you're fine, up you get. Now, they might not be fine, but if most of the time they go, oh, I've fallen over. Yeah, you're fine. Oh, yeah, actually, I am fine. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, okay, I'll just crack on. There's a degree of that. So, but again, as I said before, it comes back to doing these hard things that are maybe rubbish to do, but are great to have done. They may be horrible in and of the moment or the days that you're doing them, because they're physically hard, they're tiring, they're cold, wet, and miserable. You're on your own. It's just not nice. But afterwards, you'll be better for it. You really will.
We have a closing tradition on the podcast.
Oh dear. Okay.
And I know we're up and coming to I know you need to get away, so I'm conscious that I don't want to sort of spend too much of your time. What do you think is the most valuable lesson you've learned in your life so far?
Oh, Jesus, I don't know why I should have rebuilt it.
We do this deliberately. We spring it up on you.
There's a couple of things, I think. So I mentioned before about, the pursuit of happiness and all that stuff. Well, I think one lesson is to, and I haven't quite figured all the answers out yet, but if you can work out, and I'm using the word happiness, but insert whatever term you want to use, but whatever makes you, if you can work out what makes you happy and pursue that, and if it's making money, crack on, right? I don't think there's that many people who would be, but there's some people I'm sure who making money makes them happy. Great, crack on, mate. If being super famous makes you happy, absolutely crack on. But make sure that it does, because often you think it will, and then you attain it. It turns out it isn't. You know, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not enough. But the other thing is that 90% of your happiness is dictated, I think, by the people you surround yourself with. So if you're doing a shit job for shit money with your best mates, it's still cool. It's still going to be all right. You're doing an amazing job for loads of money, but you're working with absolute arseholes. You're going to be miserable every single day. That's the bottom line. So choose your partner, choose your community, choose your tribe, choose your work colleagues carefully, because that will influence how happy you are more than anything else.
It's a very good answer for not even having a plan for it.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks so much.
No, mate, I seriously appreciate the time. You know, I've been kind of, as I said before, you've been on my radar for a while to try and get you in and talk to you. So I really appreciate it. And also, you're from Aberdeen, am I right?
Yes, well, yeah, between Aberdeen and Vanessa, but yeah.
A fellow Scot. So it's always good to get a fellow Scot on the podcast. We're taking over, so we are.
It is, although the only problem is you then end up speaking more Scottish than you would do normally, which means half the audience are like, I haven't got a clue what those two are talking about. I can't understand a word they're saying. I suppose when I do public speaking, and I'm, like in London, I've got to really slow down and enunciate. But then I did once for the Royal Scottish Geographical Society and did it in Aberdeen. I could go full Doric.
Yeah.
I could just unleash. And I got on stage like, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for welcoming me to speak in Aberdeen. It's great.